Ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure you've heard me lament 100 times, the quality of mobile games, especially the first-person shooters, have seemingly gotten worse over the past decade. Somehow, as companies get bigger, the profit increases, the computing technology goes up exponentially, the games themselves have gotten worse in almost every way. But that's just nostalgia, right? Well, many content creators like myself seem to disagree. We blame money and reflect on the finer days of mobile gaming via nostalgic monologues, and call it a day. And while saying the games are the way they are because of money is not technically wrong, it's not even close to doing the problem at hand justice. And the decline of games is not the end result of greed, but rather a symptom of a much larger dysfunction of the global economy, its impact spanning across a lot more than mobile gaming. Bread. If you're someone who likes making bread, maybe you can sell for money. With that money, you can now buy things. More flour, a pizza, a 4-year Nikocado Avocado OnlyFans subscription, anything, really. And this system is known as capitalism. With this system, demand ensures that any need is met. If there's a market, there's a seller. If there are multiple sellers, the better product, the one with more customer satisfaction, will sell better in that market, and in turn be more profitable. If the bread you make is really good, everyone will buy it over your competitor. Will then have to improve his own recipe. And this is a fantastic system on a small scale, and has proven benefits. In short, an open market favors the sellers that are better for the consumer through what is essentially an open trade evolution. Theoretically then, profit equals consumer satisfaction. But there's an issue with this logic though. There is a distinct difference between what is best for the consumer and what is most profitable. Imagine you're selling a light bulb that intentionally burns out after 2 years, forcing the customer to buy a new one, or live in the dark. That would be more profitable than manufacturing a bulb that would last by artificially driving up demand. But it is not in the consumer's best interest. It would be more wasteful, too. Something interesting to note about bread and light bulbs is that they aren't consumable. Not like eating you can eat bread but not light bulb. My point is that they are temporary. They can be used up. Video games are not bread, or light bulbs, and when someone buys a game, they're really just buying the right to copy the ones and zeros to their computer, or console, or Freedom Phone, or whatever, as well as maybe using the seller's servers. What this means is, once a game is purchased, the seller basically loses the customer. Even if they beat that game, it's done. You can't just sell it to them again. So, to combat this, game sellers need to get creative to boost monetization. You could sell sequels, prequels, spin-offs, merchandise, DLC, anything related to your original game to keep the cash flowing. Honestly, I'm surprised we haven't seen more monthly subscription services for multiplayer games. One creative monetization idea discovered was ingenious. What if, and I'm just spitballing here, you could sell the customer absolutely nothing? What if you can make money from pretty much thin air? And that's where in-game currencies and microtransactions come in. They literally, don't exist. You can get the player to pay money to get a number on a computer to go up. Don't want to pay? How about watching this ad? With this currency, you can buy cosmetics, which only need to be made once, but can be sold an infinite amount of times. This means dummy high profit margins. Microtransactions are ingenious, because you can get money out of a game that you already sold, or out of a game that is, in theory at least, free. Most effectively, though, there is the realm of predatory monetization. Here are just some of the many ways to manipulate and pressure the player to spend money on ones, zeros, and shiny pixels. We got energy points, a meter that runs out after a certain amount of plays, forcing the player to either pay or watch an ad to keep playing. We got gambling. People are likely to buy and keep buying loot crates that have the possibility for cool cosmetics, even if the odds themselves are infinitesimal. We have, plain and simple, a classic pay to win. If you're being repeatedly clapped in a first-person shooter by some kid who you know is way worse than you, you're going to want to buy his 2-hit shiny gun and show him who's boss. You do, and you start owning every lobby until you find someone with a thermal scope sniper that bops you from across the map, and the cycle continues. Use all 3 of these tactics among 65 games, half of which are targeted towards children, and you're looking at a cool 3 milli a month. Furthermore, there are predicted 3.8 billion smartphones in the world. A company that can make a game that can run on a huge portion of them has billions of potential customers. In a study done by the software company Imaginovation, 49% of mobile gamers are likely to spend money, and this number would be close to 100% if the game had ads. What is important to note, though, is that not all games that make a lot of money are inherently bad. PUBG Mobile is 7th on the top 10 most profitable games list, and it is actually a pretty good game, and many other games in the top 10 and 50 list are too. But the issue is that for every COD Mobile, there's 1,000 Raid Shadow Legends. The issue is that many older franchises have gone downhill, and as someone who predominantly plays mobile shooters, I can tell you that the number of games worth playing has gone down considerably and consistently. It was never, frankly, huge to begin with. See, the issue is not simply a handful of instances of corporate greed, but rather a market that systematically prioritizes monetization over user experience. Fortunately, the number of mobile games is truly staggering. So surely, if one studio or company is creating crappy games, I can just play another one, right? Well, that's the thing. Alright, back to bread and light bulbs. By using sawdust instead of flour, and predatory marketing, you managed to halve the cost of your bread and double profit. You made so much profit that you just bought the bread shop of your competitor, as well as every grocery store and restaurant on the West Coast. Now, if people want bread, they have to eat sawdust or drive for 8 hours. As a light bulb seller, when you are worried that people are going to switch to a seller that has a product that lasts longer, there's a handy solution. When a single seller dominates an entire market, it is known as a monopoly. Mono one, poly sell. In real life, there are very strict rules on how much of a given market an entity can occupy. What is more common, though, is the oligopoly. Oligos few, poly sell, you get the idea. Instead of a single seller, it's multiple sellers interconnected and interdependent on each other. To say the global mobile games market is a true oligopoly would be an exaggeration, but it wouldn't be 100% off either. Have you noticed anything strange about the top 20 most grossing mobile games? What about the games you play? 4 out of the top 10 grossing mobile games are published by Tencent, 5 if you count minority shares. 2 of the biggest competitive shooters on mobile were made and published by Tencent, and most damningly, in China, the biggest mobile market in the world, Tencent and NetEase account for 70% of market revenue, coming at 50 and 20% respectively. Tencent also owns almost 20 subsidiaries in gaming alone. Tencent owns 5% stake in Ubisoft, which is owned by Gameloft, which is then bought by Vivendi. And at the end of the day, most of that money went straight to the Guillemot family, which is a net worth identical to all of Ubisoft. There are dozens of instances of corporations being interconnected like this, and small groups of individuals making inordinate amounts of money from these corporations is not only common, but it is how they function. Massive investments from these entities with a stupid amount of money is how large corporations make most of their money. To Tencent, you are not the customer, or NetEase or Ubisoft or any large game publisher. The real customer is the investors. And what this means is the market is pretty much controlled by a handful of entities with mind-melting amounts of money, private or corporate. This significantly reduces the variation and creativity in games being released, as game publishers simply cannot afford to take a risk that would reduce interest in investors. And those investors aren't just giving money away to be nice, though. They invested that money to make it back. So if a studio wants to keep those investors or get more, they need to make profit. And the fastest way to do that? It's recap time. Game studios and the massive conglomerates that own them are essentially using the mobile market as a cookie-clicker-esque money farm. Because of this, the pursuit of optimized profit has led to many games, not all, having predatory monetization and just being overall kinda, not good. Furthermore, in order to not unnerve investors, publishers avoid taking risks and anything that has the possibility to not make returns. This has all led the mobile market to be uncreative, and while there are certainly a handful of good games, to be generally consisting of games that aren't too good. It's not all bad, though, as the companies themselves employ literally hundreds of thousands or more of developers, artists, and other creative talents to make these games. I mean, working at the studios that conglomerates hire to make these games can't be that bad, right? Let's step away from talking strictly about mobile games and look at the gaming industry at large. A phrase I'm sure you all have heard thrown around is crunch culture. Crunching is where an employee is voluntold to work usually unpaid overtime to meet a deadline. Crunch culture is the workplace culture that encourages just that. The reason why crunch culture is so common in game development is the conflict between the inconsistencies in time it takes to develop a game and the investors that are demanding its punctuality. The investors say that they will buy X stake in revenue if they make Y returns in Z amount of time. So the higher-ups demand the employees to meet that deadline to satisfy the investor. And the worst part is, many developers are considered contractors. No benefits, no union, and they can be fired at any time if they refuse to overwork themselves. And this toxic crunch culture is not only inhumane on the employees, stressful on the financial officers of a company that managed and hired them, although do we really care about them, and frustrating for the investor. Again, I mean, I'm not really losing sleep over that either. Most important to the gamer, though, it can lead to rushed and low-quality work from the developers that were overworked and underpaid to hell. Overworked employees are not the only form of toxicity in the workplace, and top-down corporate structure and lack of regulation has bred all sorts of toxicity. The nature and why and how so many workplaces in the game development space are so abhorrent is a topic for another time. But there is absolutely no doubt that there's a serious issue in the way many workplaces are conducted. To make matters worse, suing massive corporations is notoriously difficult, and unless there is literally mountains of documentation, many lawsuits just go nowhere. So what am I trying to prove? That capitalism is bad? That we should all go full Soviet Russia? Well, the common consensus is that capitalism is undoubtedly flawed, but it's better than communism, so we just have to live with it. The thing is, many of the issues I mentioned are not mostly issues inherent to capitalism, but rather a symptom of the resurgence of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism, in short, is the idea of the absolute free market, the belief that there should be no intervention from the government or any third party in the way business is conducted. And this also applies to the individual. In a neoliberal state, it is up to each individual to support themselves. The government is not obligated to chip in for things like healthcare and infrastructure. Neoliberal capitalism was originally thought to be on the extreme, and popular among far-right political groups until the 1980s. With administrations such as Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, neoliberal capitalism made a resurgence, and is now widely accepted all over the world. This has led to a lack of regulation among corporations in every market, the effects of which are also felt in our case in gaming. If you agree with everything so far in this video, that unregulated capitalism has led to a decline in mobile gaming and the gaming space as a whole, well, here's the uncomfortable part. If mobile games are bad, big whoop, who really cares? But mobile games are not the only thing being monetized on a global scale, and their companies are not the only employers. How many markets, not just in gaming, have gone down the hill due to unregulated capitalism? What about the movies you watch, the clothes you wear, the social media you consume? It doesn't stop there either. Food, medicine, housing, the jobs we work to survive. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the decline of mobile games is not unique to the market. The only reason why we noticed games to get worse is because we've been paying closer attention, and openly criticizing games is an integral part of online culture. So, I leave you with this. Start paying closer attention to the products you consume, the wages of those that make them, and the overall well-being of the world and its people. When we look closely, we may find that mobile games are not the exception, they are the rule. And by the way, that light bulb analogy was real.